The British aristocracy colonized the United States, including the South. I've reviewed the economic reasons for that colonization in other videos, and there are too many military reasons to even go into, but the U.S. is essentially the attack dog military-industrial complex for the British Empire, a beast empire who sits at the top of the Neo-Babylonian world system currently. In this video, I will talk more about that Druidic influence of the British aristocracy in the U.S., specifically the South. Druidism has been formally classified as a religion under charity law for the first time in Britain, which means that Druids can receive exemptions from taxes on donations and now have the same status as mainstream religions such as the Church of England. The Georgia colony was founded by General James Oglethorpe, whose family history dates to William the Conqueror and the House of Stuart. James Edward Oglethorpe is named after his relatives James II of England, King of England and Ireland from 1633 to 1701, and after James Francis Edward Stuart, claimant to the throne of England, Ireland, and Scotland from 1701 to 1766. For more information about the witches that settled the U.S. and the House of Stuart, see my video titled The House of Stuart, and this is it. This is the Oglethorpe coat of arms, and it's got wild boars on it. The boar is a Druidic symbol of office and a family badge inherited from the Scythian dragon tribe. The dragon is a symbol of bloodline descent, a clan badge of the Druidic race. Essentially, the symbols of the boar and the dragon have become interchangeable. This is the blue boar on Camilla's heraldry. And you also see the blue boar at the top of the heraldry of Elihu Yale, who Yale University is named for. And he descends from several royal houses of Britain, including the Plantagenets and the Tudors. The Golden Isles are islands on the coast of Georgia and named the Golden Isles by a Scottish nobleman, Sir Robert Montgomery. The Golden Isles region became known for its cotton plantations, exported to the UK for sale to the rest of Europe at a premium. Jekyll Island is part of the Golden Isles, where the Federal Reserve was founded by the aristocracy, and I've covered Jekyll Island in prior videos. Brunswick, Georgia, is also part of the Golden Isles, tracing its history to early colonial times and the founding of the Georgia colony by General James Oglethorpe in 1732. Brunswick became a royal colony in 1752. George Washington named Brunswick one of the original ports of entry for the 13 colonies. In 1771, when the city was chartered, the influence of the alliance with England was obvious in the naming of their streets and squares. I'll go over some of those. King and Queen squares were named to honor the royal rulers of Britain. Frederica Square was named for Frederick Lewis, the Prince of Wales. Frederick Lewis was the father of King George III. Hanover Square was named after the House of Hanover, from which England's rulers at that time, namely George III, descended. Brunswick is an English and German surname that originated associated with the Royal House of Hanover, who brought it to England. Jekyll Square is named for Sir Joseph Jekyll. Halifax Square was named for George Montague Dunk, 2nd Earl of Halifax in the Department of the British Cabinet, and he was known for his success in promoting American commerce and became known as the father of the colonies. This is a photo that I took of the sunset at Sidney Lanier Bridge in Brunswick, Georgia. It seems it was specifically designed to showcase the setting sun, and this photo was taken from the port of Brunswick around the spring equinox. Druids have been worshiping the sun for thousands of years. Now we'll review Sidney Lanier, who this bridge is named for. Sidney Lanier was alive from 1842 to 1881. He was a musician, and he played the flute like the magic flute, a poet, an author, and a bard. A bard is an oral repository and professional storyteller, verse maker, music composer, oral historian, and genealogist employed by a noble to commemorate one or more of the noble's ancestors and to praise the nobles with their activities and including their religion. Sidney Lanier also served in the Confederate States Army during the Civil War, which is a pattern we also see with British aristocrats. His lineage goes back to John Lanier, who was born in London in about 1655, and he was the son of John and Lucrece Lanier. John Lanier and Lucrece Lanier were among a group of 47 people transported to Virginia by Howell Price. For his help in setting up the colony, Price received a patent for 2,350 acres of land, and John Lanier owned 700 of those acres. On his mother's side, Sidney Lanier descends from the House of Burgess. The House of Burgess was a house of the Virginia General Assembly from 1619 to 1776. It existed in the colonial U.S. in Virginia in what was British America, appointed by the Crown. Many of Sidney Lanier's poems are written in Old English. He eventually became a professor of literature at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, specializing in the works of Shakespeare. Lanier also published literary works about knightly combat and chivalry, including the work titled The Boy's King Arthur, based on Sir Thomas Malory's compilation of the legends of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. And if you watch this channel, you know that King Arthur mythos is just more polytheist history, specifically of the dragon bloodline. Sidney Lanier became hailed in the South as the poet of the Confederacy. And there was a postage stamp created for him in 1972 to honor him. In addition to the bridge in Brunswick, many schools and other structures and 2 lakes are named for him, including Lake Lanier in Georgia. Sidney Lanier reportedly sat under this oak tree to write the poem The Marshes of Glen, which is one of his most famous poems. The Marshes of Glen is basically a love poem to the oak trees. Oak trees were sacred to the Druids and central to their rituals and beliefs. They believed they were a gateway to the spirit world. They performed religious rites in oak groves, including gathering mistletoe with a golden scythe. They also ate acorns to divine the future. The Druids did. So now we know why there is a squirrel eating an acorn atop the heraldry of Robert E. Lee, who is another Confederate general and a Druid who is carved into Stone Mountain. The oak tree represents a tradition of life to death and is believed that anything that grows on the oak tree is blessed by the gods. The word Druid comes from a Celtic word meaning knower of the oak tree. In ancient Greece, the oak tree was sacred to Zeus. In Gone with the Wind, which is a story about the Civil War, 12 Oaks is the plantation home named after the 12 oak trees that surrounded it. Now I'm just going to read the beginning and the ending verses from the poem The Marshes of Glen by Sidney Lanier. And Glen originates from the Old Welsh name Glendwr, with roots in Irish Gaelic. The first verse is, Glooms of the live oaks, beautiful braided and woven with intricate shades of the vines that myriad cloven, clamor the forks of the multi-firm boughs, emerald twilights, virginal shylights. And so the last verse is, and now from the vast of the Lord will the waters of deep roll in on the souls of men. But who will reveal to our waking kin the forms that swim and the shapes that creep under the waters of sleep? And I could know what swimmeth below when the tide comes in on the length and the breadth of the marvelous marshes of Glen. So most of that poem is about the love affair with oak trees, but then in the end it seems like he's talking about forms that swim and creep under the ocean and come in with the tide. So it's very witchy, but I'm not sure how else you can, interpret that, especially given the other poems written by him, like A Florida Ghost, which is about a demon he meets on a Florida beach. The Ballad of the Trees and the Master, Owl Against Robin, which is about an owl in an oak tree, Hard Times in Elfland, and To Wilhelmina, which is about a spirit's soul in a cloud. So it's recorded that he was Catholic, but he writes like a druid, like a bard, he was clearly honored for that. Lanier's poem, The Marshes of Glen, is the inspiration for cantata by the same name that was created by the modern English composer Andrew Downers to celebrate the royal opening of the Adrian Boult Hall in Birmingham, England in 1986. The Sidney Lanier Cottage in Macon, Georgia is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The Square Stone 4 Southern Poets Monument, located between 7th and 8th Streets in Augusta, lists Lanier as one of Georgia's 4 great poets, all of whom were in the Confederate military. The other poets on the monument are James Ryder Randall, Adam Ryan, and Paul Hayne. Baltimore honored Lanier with a large and elaborate bronze and granite sculpture monument on the campus of Johns Hopkins University. Lanier was also later memorialized on the campus of Duke University in Durham, North Carolina, along with Thomas Jefferson and Robert E. Lee. And remember, Robert E. Lee was the one with the heraldry of the squirrel eating an acorn, which is symbolic of a druid divining the future. And here are all the places named for him for Sidney Lanier. It's quite a lot. Including Lanier University, which was owned by the KKK, who are druids, which I covered in my last video. Thanks for listening.